again. You are still watching STN Television, Ganka STN. Proceeding to the next session of STN, which is Halada Dalka, we always discuss about the current situation of the country in terms of economic, education, health, and other aspects that really affect the people. Today we'll be discussing a number of issues, including the president's visit in the Nyanza region, and also we'll be discussing about the history of devolution. We have a great man who will be assisting us discuss this issue is Ahmed Hussein, a financial and economic expert who is also a political analyst. Ahmed, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to STN Television.
Thank you so much, Ismail, for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome again. We really appreciate your time. Let's start with introduction. People would like to know who is Ahmed Hussein.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ahmed Hussein. Apparently, I'm a finance expert. A qualified accountant and a trained auditor. This has been my bread and butter for the last slightly over a decade. So that's what I do on a daily basis as far as building the nation is concerned.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope now they can know who is Ahmed Hussein. Thank you so much. Let's begin with the President Ruto's visit to the Nyanza region. I think this was a visit that many political experts like you have been wondering, how impromptu is it?
Okay, thank you. I think the President's visit to specifically the Nyanza region, of course, some people are saying it is first time, others are saying it's second time. It is a good move by a sitting head of state to have done this. I think it's wise. We appreciate the fact that democratically, I think for the last bare minimum 3 elections or so, this is that's 2013, 2017, and 2022. The last 3 elections. The people of Nyanza have had a divergent political view from the President William Ruto,
Okay.
in the sense that they have always been voting in different camps. So his visit is a welcome, is a symbolic, in the sense that it portrays his leadership as a man of principles in terms of holding the nation together, in terms of making sure that yes, we have had elections, yes, we have had our differences, but that's not the end, and that as a nation we need to move forward. There's so much to be done. We are grappling with a lot of challenges as a nation, just like many other countries across the globe. So his move is meant to consolidate in additional confidence from the people of the Lake region and Nyanza. Remember, the head of state for quite some time has been saying that Kenya has a lot of persons whose sources of livelihoods are facing so much challenges, and what he called the hustler sort of narrative, which is largely a factual statement, in the sense that you see, on average, if you see even at the cost of living, things are going worse by the day. So what he has done the last few days in the Nyanza region is quite welcome. And as a starting point, of course, he had talked about the 5,000 affordable housing units. He was in Oyugis, Homa Bay, Kendu Bay, those region. So This is a clear testimony that he wants people's livelihoods to be improved, regardless of their political ideologies, regardless of their democratic principles, regardless of where they come from, because at the end of the day, on average, Kenya, I think the population is running into 60 million. So at the end of the day, regardless of who voted for him, it is his sole responsibility to make sure that he holds the nation together, which of course he's doing. It's quite commendable that he's doing this. Additionally, also, I think he cracked a joke when he was in, I think, was it Homa Bay? Yes. He talked about the Opio and Oyoyo thing. When one of the leaders there mentioned that he was given a lot of, is it votes or support or something like that. So this is a clear testimony that he wants the nation to move forward. Additional also, I think the president talked about, besides that, that he's not only doing this affordable housing project for just one settlement, but so many places in the country, which is quite a significant sort of thing to happen 4 years, 4 months after the election.
Okay, Ahmed. Okay, this is a region that is Azimio and Raila political stronghold. What main objective politically may the President Ruto have? And if I remind you, for the last time, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Prime Cabinet Musalia Mudavadi have been doing a move to at least bring those MPs and other political leaders who are allied with Azimio. What political objective may the President have visiting Nyanza province? Okay,
thank you, Ismail, for this. You see, the President, fortunately, is a very smart man. Smart in the sense that he sees far and wide. That's why you can remember during the last 2 years or so, in as much as he was the deputy president, he has had his fair share of challenges, but he did not pull out of leadership. He did not pull out of the equation. He said, okay, he's looking what is ahead. His target is 2020. Rather, his target was 2022, and that he did not give any attention to answer back the political opponents who were so much demeaning him, who were so much looking down at the fact that he was able to become the next president of the republic during the election 2022. So I think as far as your question is concerned, what his focus is, one, to bring the nation together, because the assumption was maybe in case he becomes the head of state, by the mere fact that, say, the Nyanza region did not vote for him, they will be isolated. So he has gone there to destroy the narrative that Luo Nyanza, or rather the Nyanza region, will not be part of the government's focus in terms of nationhood, building the nation. Additionally, he went there because it is his sole responsibility as the head of state. But more importantly, remember, fortunately, I think President Ruto, if my memory serves me right, is the first presidential candidate who contested for election and won it for the first time. I mean, this is a milestone achievement. This cannot be downplayed. This is a super sort of achievement. So his thinking is, yes, I have won the elections. Yes, and you never know. He's a politician. Of course, he has behind his mind, in as much as he did not talk much about it when he was in Luo Nyanza. What he's saying is that huko mbele tutapambana. I think this is a statement that he put across. Huko mbele tutapambana, implying that come 2027 elections, we will again come together in terms of vote searching, and democratically Kenyans will go and vote for their candidates of choice. So So he's doing two in one. Priority for him now is not to politic, but rather the president's priority for now is to develop the nation all the way from Turkana down to coastal region, from the east to the west. I mean, Kenya has so many challenges, which I think let me call it, he's a youthful president. Youthful in the sense that he has the energy, he has the strength, and he can achieve so much about this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's look now at I think the president and the administration is 100 plus in power now, 100 days plus. Let's look now what the administration have delivered, what was in the main manifesto during the campaign. Beginning now, Hustler Fund. This has been a very, very big manifesto during the campaign. President saying that Hustler Fund will be changing the idea of many people, the idea of Kenya, and even the situation economically of the country. Hustler Fund, we know it has been launched. A lot of people have taken the money. So far, we are seeing in the record that almost more than 3 million Kenyans have taken the money, and more than 5 million Kenyans have registered for this Hustler Fund. What do you think this Hustler Fund can change economically, how the situation of the country is now?
Okay, thank you so much. I think, yes, you know, the president at this point, what he's trying to do is he's trying to slowly convince the hustlers or the entire nation, because almost everyone is a hustler, because people are struggling with the means of survival. So the Hustler Fund, the narrative has been quite good. Of course, there are a few challenges here and there in terms of from an implementation perspective. For how long can this be sustainable is a question that many economic experts are asking themselves. There are people on the other side of the political divide who are saying that the Hustler Fund, from a legal perspective, has not been fine-tuned end to end. But of course, we are in a democratic sort of democratic state, and people are entitled to their opinions. But the president, I'm sure, is going to do bigger than the Hustler Fund, because the Hustler Fund is just a component of the many pledges that he made. I'm sure he also knows that, of course, rather, the government knows that the Hustler Fund thing might not be sustainable in the long run, because that's why they're working on alternatives like job creation, industrialization, things to do with agriculture and food production, so that almost every other Kenyan can be independent of the strained mechanisms and means of making livings as we are in currently. So I think in a nutshell, the Hustler Fund has been a good idea, but the sustainability is a very important thing that that everyone else is asking themselves. But again, the government, of course, has been consulting to come up with this idea. The economists and the financial experts that have been, or rather that they are working with them, or rather for them. So I don't want to downplay the Hustler Fund, because they have their own wisdom as to why they said it is a short-term sort of alternative. Because you see, if I may refer you to some famous French economist, Mr. Jean-Baptiste says, who I think lived sometimes in the 1700s, that is the latter part of the 1700s. He says that the encouragement of mere consumption cannot sustain an economy, and that production is the alternative way out of this. So that's why I think the president is reasoning and thinking round the clock, consulting and engaging all his youthful administration and asking them to make sure that his pledges are delivered to the letter, 100%.
Okay. The president made another profound move in judiciary. I think you remember, he appointed 6 judges to the High Court immediately after he was sworn in, and even he was present during the sworn of these 6 judges, focusing on the independency of the judiciary. That is something the president have been going through even during when he was the deputy president of the nation. What do you think this move can bring in the service and quality of the judiciary?
Okay, thank you. I think the judiciary and the executive issue has had its fair share of rough moments. I think since the nullification of the 2017 elections, in which the former president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, said that he will revisit. I remember this. But again, that was it. I think it's now behind us. And some persons have been saying, of course, persons from the perspective of assumptions with people has been that the fact that the former president said he will revisit had meant that some judges, or rather, will not be sworn in on time, and that some judicial process will be frustrated. But again, to a large extent, the current president, that is President William Ruto, has had his own reservations about those judges being not sworn in, and that he has been always agitating for them to be given their rights and be sworn into office. And on that note is why you can clearly see that when he came into office, I think in the shortest time possible, he went ahead and swore those judges. He did this because he wanted to gain the confidence of more Kenyans, and he knew that it was a right thing to do to swear in those judges. And I think, you see, fortunately, the current constitution is quite decent. Rather, it's very decent and talks widely about the independency of government institutions. That's why you will hear that as far as the constitution is concerned, the executive is independent of the judiciary. The judiciary is independent of legislative assembly. Of course, if you juxtapose the current constitution and the constitution that we had at the time of independence, I think up to now, sometimes in 2010, that is Friday, 27th of August, 2010, there was some sort of intertwingling or mix-up between the executive and the legislature. That's why you can remember up to until before the election for 2013, the situation in terms of, I mean, the touch sort of between the legislative and just to give you an example, between the legislative and the executive was that the ministers, I mean, the ministers then were appointed by the president from the members of the National Assembly, which meant that someone is elected, I mean, purposely to legislate by a certain constituency, then this same person is taken, or rather appointed by the president as a minister for different ministries. So implying that, I mean, the person will be dining with the president in the evening, and tomorrow the person will be expected to legislate on behalf of his electorate and the nation. So there was that mix-up. So what do you call it? What we call there was no division of labor from the perspective of job differentiation, because someone is a minister at the same time an MP. So whatever that does not favor the executive, he will tomorrow be tomorrow in the National Assembly to again propose and pass bills against those things that against the executive. Instead of now, and remember, the sole responsibility while these persons were elected into parliament is to hold check and balance on the executive. So there was some sort of duplication and lack of job distribution and delegation at that point in time. But the current constitution is quite different altogether, in the sense that if you're in the judiciary, you're in the judiciary. If you're in the executive, you're in the executive. And if you are in the legislative, rather the assemblies, whether the Senate or the National Assembly, then you are sticking to whatever you have been elected and appointed to do by the people of Kenya.
It's another question we'll be looking about the role of Senate and National Assemblies. That will be a question we'll be looking at the interview today. But another essential move the president made is in the security. The president made an essential move, changing all departments, doing a reform in the security sector. We know he changed the IG, he appointed a new DCI director, and all this. How did this change the security situation of the country? Despite we are having some insecurity issues in some part of the country, including this Nairobi. Ahmed, do you think the move and the reforms the president made in the security sector did bring any changes? Do you think?
Okay. I think one thing that we need to understand clearly, as far as that your specific question is concerned, is the fact that the president has been the deputy president in the last 10 years, implying that he knows so much as far as administration, leadership, and the needs of the country is concerned. Every leadership or every administration has come into office with certain pledges, with certain manifestos, with certain ideologies and ways of taking the country to the next level in terms of development, amongst others. So the president did all this because he knew that in his best wisdom and in the best wisdom of the administration, it is in the best interest of the country to have some change of guards in some of the government's departments and institutions. Having been in the previous, having been 10 years deputy president, he knows that there were a few challenges maybe, and he's convinced that he can maybe close on those shortcomings, if any, those gaps, if any, by doing things in a certain way, which I think is what he has done already, part of it, and I'm sure he's trying to handle each and every case as and when now he gets the right timings in terms of making those changes. So remember, the president is the president of Kenya, but again, he has a sole responsibility also to make sure that he is the face of Kenya outside the country. So Kenya is fortunate to be the leading economy in the entire East Africa region. So he has to portray and make sure that he sees to it that development, regional relationship, foreign relationship, things to do with the bigger economic bloc of East Africa, the Eastern Africa, Africa as a continent. I mean, fortunately, Kenya happens to be a country that many people are looking forward to in terms of engagements, that is whether the West or the East, the America and the likes. So he has to make sure, or rather what he's doing is try to place the country forward, be it relationship with foreign partners, be it relationship with the donors, international financial institutions, inviting foreign direct investment, foreign companies that is, and global multinationals. That's why the other day we had some event in Nyayo Stadium about ICT and the likes. So you see now, for the president to portray the best image of Kenya outside the country, he has to make sure that the house is in order. And for the house to be in order, he has to appoint to the respective government institutions persons that he believes are to the best of his knowledge and wisdom, the right candidates and persons who will work with him through the journey to deliver his manifesto and the pledges that he made to Kenyans. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. We have another important topic we will be discussing, but before we move to that topic, let's look at the cost of living before the administration went into the power and after. What changes did the administration bring for the last 100 days plus it have been in power? Cost of living, we know when we are looking cost of living, we are looking the essential in state or situation the people are living in Kenya. The administration, if you remember, one of the big agendas of the President Ruto was to change the cost of living of Kenyans, where he said more than 5 million Kenyans are living under the level of subsistence. What changes did the current administration brought when we are talking about cost of living?
Okay, I think, you know, the challenge we have in Kenya as a nation is that in as much as we have many politicians who are very sharp and expert on matters finance and economics, instead of appreciating the economic factors in the region, in the country, in the region, and in the entire world, they will prefer to politicize almost every other thing. Yes, President came into office as the head of state. Now, the cost of living is a very contentious and is a very contentious thing, and I think for the last, I think since we got independence, we have had a lot of turbulences as far as the cost of living is concerned. So it's not first thing that is starting with this administration. It's something that has been there for quite some time, although we have had our fair share of ups and downs. Now, we need to ask ourselves, which I think most of politicians who are sharp apparently seem to be ignoring, but they rather politicize the situation. We have to ask ourselves what has happened in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years across the globe. I think sometimes in 2019, we have had the COVID. But even before COVID, when Jubilee administration came into office, our former head of state, that is Mzee Mwai Kibaki, I think when he was exiting office, Kibaki took over from Mzee Moi. Now, when Kibaki was leaving office and giving the mantle to former President Kenyatta, what we had is I think the total national debt was around $16 billion. That's around 1.9 trillion or something like that. Now, when President President Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta left office, this went to from $16 billion, which is 1.8 trillion shilling, all the way to, I think, over $70 billion, meaning more than 7 trillion, more than 7 trillion running into 8 or 9 trillion shilling, depending on the...
Close to 10 trillion.
Is it 10 trillion? Yeah. Yeah. So you can imagine from slightly below 2 trillion shillings that former President Kibaki left at to, like you just mentioned, between 9 and 10 trillion that President Uhuru Kenyatta left at. Now, Kibaki left at that because of the Thika highways, among the other notable economic activities that he did, and the job creations, and having converted a lot of tertiary institutions into fully fledged universities, which to some extent was helpful, although some people had also criticized those moves. The leadership that had just left office, President Uhuru Kenyatta, left it from President Uhuru Kenyatta, left it at 9 or 10 trillion. And this was, of course, informed by wisdom made by the economists and people who are advising him. You see, the ultimate objective is to develop the country. And sometimes along the way, challenges show up here and there. Substantial borrowings were made from the international markets. We have had a couple of Eurobond and some other borrowings. And you see, all this boil down to the fact that we have a lot of debts as far as the country is concerned, implying that our public debt has been growing over the years. And at the end of the day, you see, government is perpetuity, implying that every other leadership that comes into office is obligated to pay what the previous leadership will have left as far as national debt will be concerned. So former President Kenyatta borrowed so much. So much was done in terms of developments here and there. But again, we have had challenges in terms of a few implementations here and there. Which relates to some divergent views and misunderstandings in terms of those implementations. Of course, just like any other government, we have had some people who may have misused, people who were in power, government appointees, who may have misused those opportunities to maybe enrich themselves. But again, you see, we have institutions to handle all those, if at all they did it the right way or the wrong way.
Thank you so much. Just because of the time, it's good to have you here today. An important topic which I think many people just heard about it but don't understand. Let's talk about this topic. Today we want to talk about devolution, how it started, the challenges, the impact, and what it brought when it comes. It's good to have you, someone, I hope you're someone who knows more about it, followed more about it. Ahmed, how did devolution started? Many people don't know that about, but they just had walk up into it, but don't know. What was the plan behind the start of this? How did it all started?
Okay, I think I'll answer your question shortly. But the earlier question on the cost of living is a question that touches and is dear to my heart, because you know, we can't walk out of the house without that. So briefly, maybe I will talk something about it. The cost of living in terms of the unga prices, the cooking oil price have been bad. In terms now, we ought to understand where we came from and how did this happen. Maybe in few words, the last 2 years we have had challenge with the unga prices because one, we have had some bad droughts across the nation. Two, we have had challenge with fertilizers, which the current administration is handling well. Three, we have had challenge with the fuel importation from Indonesia. Indonesia happens to be one of the leading exporters of sunflower oil. So you see, if there was no importation, implying that the little we had here, there was so much demand, and that meant that so much money chasing so few of goods, which meant that Kenyans were struggling and are still struggling with the cost of living. The head of state is always talking about reducing the unga prices now at 240. Of course, his plan maybe in a couple of months will be to get it way below 200 shillings, reduce the price of mbolea, that is the fertilizer. So all these things have come together. The war in Ukraine, of course, you know, has affected so much. At the local level, we did not have a lot of dollar available. Ukraine, Russia fights have been bad. You'll be amazed if I tell you that apparently Russia produces 4.5 million barrels of crude oil per day. That's like around 100, I mean, that's like 716 million liters in a day. So the war broke up, most of these things were curtailed, implying that importation into different parts of the world were badly affected. Now, about devolution. I think devolution has been one of the best things that happened in the country. But many people do not understand, is this the first time that we have devolution, or we have ever had devolution in the past? We have had devolution at some point. We have had what I can call semblance of devolution. Semblance in the sense that, you see, when we got the trained, when we had just gotten internal self-rule, this is in 1963, December, the then governor, the general governor representing the English, had appointed a prime minister. So the independence constitution itself had a prime minister. The independence constitution itself had a bicameral house, that's parliament. In terms of, one was the Senate, the other one was the House of Representatives. The independence constitution, in addition to the office of the Prime Minister, in addition to the bicameral parliament, also had the Supreme Court, had the High Courts, had the Magistrate Court, had the Court of Appeal. All these institutions were there. But of course, as you may of course be already aware, sometimes in 1964, there were some amendments made to the Constitution, and most things to do with the office of the Prime Minister were abolished. And the only thing that this changed into us having now the President as the head of state and government. So as to whether we have ever had a devolution in the past, yes, we have had a semblance of devolution in the past. Now, in between, Kenyans have been agitating for change of constitution to have some a model in which more people can be incorporated into in offices, leadership, and what we call mashinani, the majimbo sort of thing. At some point, we have had this. So slowly over the years, amendments have been happening to the constitution. You'll be shocked if I tell you that in a span of, I think, 30 years, this is between 1964, 1963, if I may recall it well, to slightly before we did the 2010 constitution. The constitution of Kenya was amended close to 30 times.
30 times?
We did amendments were done in the constitution to the tune of 30 times. As opposed to the US, of course, this is a global giant in terms of constitution and economy. Between 1769 and 2000, and I think around the year 2000, that's a span of 32 years, 2001 to be specific. 1769 to 2001, a span of 232 years. The Constitution of the US was amended only 27 times. So here we are, 232 years, 27 times. We have 30, I think, around 40 years, or 30 years, something years, we did 30 amendments. So all these things have been happening. Now, all said and done, that's all now behind us. Now, fortunately, after a lot of push and pull, engagement of the public and the Kenyans at large, we have brought 2010 constitution promulgated, rather. It was promulgated on 27th of August. That was on a Friday in 2010. Now, this meant that we forget any constitution that was prior to this and that this came into effect. And the beautiful thing about the current constitution is, as a status, the preamble. The preamble of this constitution says, the sovereign power belongs to the people, not the politicians, not any specific sort of cocoon of persons. Rather, the sovereign power belongs to the people. What does it mean? This means many things. One of them is there can be no any changes or amendments to this constitution without engaging the public. There can be no any sort of changes that can be pushed by politicians without the common Wanjiku, without the common man in Turkana, without the common man in Majia, without the common man in Kisumu, without the common man in Taita Taveta or Nairobi being involved. They have to have their say. That's why the current constitution and devolution, of course, devolution is anchored on chapter 11 of the current constitution, is the best thing that happened, because no change can be done without involving the people. The preamble, the best.
Okay, thank you so much. I request that you will be brief on answering the questions, just because of the time. Let's look now on the NEB or ASEL region before the devolution. How this region was, what reforms did the region came to after the devolution, and all those things, the impact and the source of fund. Those are the things now I want to look at. Now let's look at how was this region, NEB or ASEL regions. Many people understand. How did devolution change these regions? Or rather, how was this region before devolution and now after the devolution?
Okay, thank you, Ismail. Of course, I think before devolution, largely life in NEB or the ASEL region, Northeastern, the Upper Eastern, and the entire ASEL region, the nomadic communities, amongst others, was very unbearable. Unbearable from two perspectives. We have had the provincial administration who, of course, posing their fair share of challenges in terms of dictating on the survival for the people. But more importantly, there was no money, there was no cash inflow into those regions. So this meant that life was very unbearable, because health was never decentralized. Rather, it was at the central government. Education, the ECDs and the likes, agriculture, everything meant that we have to wait for droplets from the national government, implying that life was very, very difficult. The roads were very poor. There were no medicines in the hospitals. School attendances was poor because there were not enough teachers all the way from the lower classes, that is the ECDs. Security was also a big concern, although security is not a delegated function. So life in NEB, the ASEL region, was very, very challenging before devolution, but now it's way better.
Okay. Okay. Someone out there who is viewing this or watching this may be asking, what is the main source of fund?
Okay. I think to answer that your question about the main source of fund, I will just mention something about Article 175 of the Constitution, which talks about the principles of devolution and how to go about it, which mentions that there should be separation of power and democratic principles. It talks about reliable. The counties should have, that is, I think, Part B, the reliable, or Part Roman 2, that is reliable sources of income from the national, reliable source of income that will help the respective devolved institutions carry out their mandates. And the third one talks about the two-third gender rule. Now, I mentioned Article 175 because of the fact that there we have for the institutions to move, for the counties to efficiently deliver services, we must have reliable source of revenue. Now, fortunately we have a couple of sources of revenue for the devolved institutions, that is the county government. So far, I think I can mention just about 6 of them, which are the main. So I think the primary one here is anchored on Article 2000, I mean Article 202 of the Constitution, Article 202, which talks about the equitable share of revenue from the national government. The second is anchored in Article 204, which talks about the equalization fund. So others are things to do with the own source revenue, that is the OSR. We have domestic borrowings. We have and grants, whether conditional or otherwise. We have borrowings from, grants from third parties, donors, and external parties. So these are the main sources of revenue. Whilst most of these are from outside, the main one that can be generated locally is what we call the OSR, the own source revenue that is done at the county level. So here the funds can be gotten from the sales fees that we charge. Here the funds can be gotten from what we call the transportation levies that are done on the road users in those respective counties. We have things to do with the business permits. So all this amalgamated together will form the own source revenue basket. And unfortunately, the challenge we have is that most of our counties, because of a couple of reasons, amongst them being the knowledges, the know-hows, the technical skills, the capacities from the perspective of do we have institutions that are making sure that collections is done. So on-source revenue is not utilized 100%. However, we are under a learning curve. So we are on the learning curve. I remember devolution is just 10 or 11 years old. We have had 50 years before devolution, or 50 plus years before devolution. So we are slowly learning as a nation, and I'm quite convinced that maybe after quite some time, on-source revenue will also be substantial in our counties, and that this will be blended together with other sources of income to make sure that the common man gets the best of service delivered to them at the right times. Thank you.
Based on devolution, it's important that people understand the different roles of the different leaders elected. You're a man who understands more about devolution, more about constitution. What are the different roles of the Senate and the Parliament based on devolution?
Okay, you see, the Senate, rather, the Legislative Assembly, that is the Parliament, the National Assembly, have been elected to purposely legislate on entire national matters. But the primary responsibility, the main responsibility for the Senate is to focus on checks and balances on matters happening at the counties from a national perspective. In the sense that when there is sharing of resources, allocation of resources, they have a part to play. In the sense that when there is mismanagement and misuse of those resources, they have part to play. Of course, people are saying that there is sort of conflict between the Senate and the National Assembly, which in my view might not be the case, because they have been elected purposely for distinct objectives. One is purely legislation, end to end. Another one, amongst other things, the primary objective of the Senate is to focus on affairs of counties from a national perspective in terms of resource allocation, accountability, check and balances. Yeah.
Hope that's clear, fair enough. Everyone that can understand. Okay. Devolution, I hope, did have challenges, right?
Of course, yes.
What are the main challenges the devolution had?
Okay, thank you. I think you see, it's a learning curve, like I mentioned earlier. we have had a couple of challenges since devolution came into existence. Challenges from the perspective of realizing to it that all the objectives of devolution are attained. Why are we having challenges? And what are these challenges is your question. So one of the challenges is this being a new thing. I mean, the user and the technical know-how of each of these respective counties has been a challenge. Remember, before devolution, almost, I think, except a few, almost every other county in Kenya was marginalized. By county, of course, we have the 47, right? And of course, these were pulled from the status, I mean, the 47 district that we had as at 47 district that we had as at 1992. I mean, that's how we came up with the 47 counties. So challenges, some of them is the lack of know-how. Another thing is political interferences. Another thing will be embezzlement of public funds. That is what we call corruption in other languages. Another thing is infrastructure. I mean, implementation means availability of infrastructure. So most of these counties never had offices. Most of these counties never had road networks. So you see, the lack of the infrastructure itself, it poses a big challenge and has been posing quite some challenge. But of course, the last 10 years, most of the counties have been trying to pull pieces together. And slowly by slowly, they have been learning how to handle some of these challenges. And I think we are destined for the best as a nation, as far as devolution is concerned.
We are closely at the end of our interview. But before I close, I would like to give you another opportunity for your closing remarks. A word of advice for the elected leaders and for Kenyans.
Okay. I think my word of advice for the elected leaders, all the way from the presidency to from the president to the MCs at the local level, is first of all, I once again would like to commend the president for all this initiative that he's taken. He has come into office at a time maybe when we have a lot of challenges, but again, he's handling it very well to see to it that food security is addressed. That's why the cost of mbolea is coming down substantially. To see to it that Kenyans are able to make good livings, and housing is what he has done. So all these things, Mr. President, I say good job, keep up, and you'll take the nation to greater destinations. That is my note to the head of state. Now, to the other elected leaders, please, you have responsibilities to serve the electorates. There's so much money. There's so much resources. There's so much funds that the counties are getting. So much from the perspective of, one, this was never there, I mean 10 years, 15 years ago. So that itself is something to be proud of. Secondly, if you utilize your resources at the respective administrative units properly and prudently, it means that you will have more cases to argue out by inviting external parties to give you more resources and more opportunities to exploit and develop your respective administrative units. For the Senate, play your role the best. Make sure the check and balance is never put under the carpet, and make sure you play your objective as expected. To the National Assembly, your sole responsibility is to legislate. Please make sure that you put Kenya before you. So generally, to all the elected leaders, what I will tell them is devolution has been the best thing that happened to this nation. Don't ever think about mutilating. Don't ever think about playing around with the contents of the current constitution. What is better and what can be improved is what now you will be able to bring to the common mwananchi, and the common mwananchi will respond on this accordingly. However, Don't be selfish. Don't be egocentric. Don't be mindful of your own interest. Be focused. I know most of you are doing a fairly good job. I mean, you know, I come from Wajir, so I come from Wajir, so the guys who are doing quite some substantial amount of good jobs in terms of education, scholarships. A notable guy is this guy from Wajir South, the MP for Wajir South. He has been given very decent support to the needy students to pursue university degrees, and this is very, very commendable. So in general, of course, for others also, I'm sure they have plans for their resident and the needy students, amongst others. So I think we have a great country, we have a great nation, we have a regional, we are the leaders of this region's economic bloc. So what I can tell to every other Kenyan is politics is behind us. Now it's time to develop and move forward as a nation. Let's come together. Let us put back, behind us our political differences and infatuations in other languages, and come together as a nation so that we build the nation, because we don't have any other country anyway. At the end of the day, we are all here to build the nation from respectively whatever we'll be doing. Someone is a farmer, someone is a teacher, someone is a newsman like you. I am a man of numbers, so that's how I butter my bread every other morning. So I think we can do maybe another stock taking of what devolution achievements have been. I mean, these 10 years are past. We have so many years ahead. I mean, Kenya is here to stay. It's only us who are just passing by, because someone is alive now, 50 years, 10 years down the line, will not be there, but generations and generations to come will have to appreciate what we have put up for them. And as a closing remark, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I will refer everyone to the famous French economist, Mr. Jean-Baptiste Say, who said that the encouragement of mere consumption is no benefit to commerce. We have seen, and I'm quoting him, we have seen nations that encourage consumption fail, and that also we have seen nations that encourage production survive up the scale. This means politicians should avoid unnecessarily giving out handouts here and there to electorates, to the people, and rather they should focus on development, orientation, scholarships, water, health, roads, electricity. We're having some challenge on the roads from Garissa, from Modagashe to all the way to Mandera. I'm also requesting the head of state, the President William Ruto, please, Mr. President, largely this has been an incomplete sort of engagement, I think, for the last 21 years since former President Kibaki came into office. Something has been done about it. The road now is up to, it left toward, Garissa is now in Modagashe. My request to the head of state is, please, I know your people are doing something about it. Please ask them to fast track this. Please ask them to push and take the roads from, the tarmac is up to somewhere in Modagashe. Please take it all the way into Mandera. Please, Mr. President, ask your team to make sure that the road from Cielo gets to Wajir, gets to Mandera, the tarmac is perfectly done, and this will help open up the entire region. I remember that Northeastern forms, I think, if not more, close to, I think, over 25% of the country landmass. So there's so much potential that can be exploited, Mr. President. Also in Wajir as a county, Mandera, of course, we have things to do with the national grid. It's not yet there. Our people are suffering because of electricity a lot of power, blackout every day and night. Some of our MPs have been talking to the ministries concerned, but again, there was no end-to-end sort of success so far. Our people are more often than not in blackout. Mr. President, my appeal to you is please engage the relevant ministries to make sure that one, the tarmac from Modogashe, that's in Garissa, reaches Wajir, again reaches Mandera in the shortest time possible. Please also ask them to connect Wajir and Mandera to the national grid so that we continue being proud of your youthful leadership that has just begun working since you were sworn into office. I mean, 4 months or so ago. To the residents, I mean, to the other local private citizens like myself, let us support our leaders. Let us hold them to accountable wherever we can. And more importantly, let's make sure that service delivery and public participation forms the core of what we always envisage to do in our day-to-day operations and engagement with our leadership. Thank you.
Just because of time is what we are doing to close the interview, but I think we'll having another interview talking about much more.
Oh, really?
Not only this.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Sana.
Ahmed Hussein, a financial and economic expert, was a man who was talking like that, saying that he's a man of numbers. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, shake hands.
Thank you. That's all our show for today. Stay with us for more. Thank you.